This presentation is on advanced persistent defenses and how we can leverage our current investments in order to defend ourselves against APTs. The reality is that organizations have purchased a lot of security equipment, and now there's people saying that we have to buy reputational analysis and throw away everything. That's not really a good idea. What we need to be able to do is leverage our infrastructures. Yes, add reputational capabilities and validation engines. But how do we do that? How do we create an organization that's able to analyze this data and respond effectively? A lot of the issue is not in the equipment of a bot, but how we respond to the events we get. And this is a difference between what we call holistic analysis and holistic response and atomic response. So to understand how to defend against APTs, we first have to understand why they're so successful. When attackers attack today, they actually have a complete infrastructure. They have DNSs and hosts, addresses, they launch their exploits, install files, and then go ahead and establish a command and control. When all these things are working together, the attack is successful. What makes APTs difficult is the fact that early attacks don't necessarily succeed, but they learn from each attack, learning how to structure their DNS and their hosts, their address, to eventually having the formula correct, and then they're successful. So if we're detecting these attacks early on, why are we failing in the long run? The reason is that each time we see an attack, we respond atomically. And this is because our information that comes from our devices are being grouped together by a SIEM, and the SIEM has no knowledge really how to fuse all the events. So when we see an event, what we see is the attack came from one place and it's going to a particular victim. And the responses that are able to occur are atomic. In other words, they occur solely based upon that event. So the defender can block the address or block the host, and they can recover the system that's being attacked. They can guess why the system is being attacked. Without spending a lot of money, the only thing a user can do is do an atomic response. So an example that we've used in a previous blog is Vicky. Now, in the case of Vicky, Vicky winds up going to a site and downloading a malicious exploit, and she's fooled in believing that she needs to install this product because it's going to allow her to read the data that she's downloading. This is very normal in a phishing attack, and the problem here is the fact that there's really no exploit. The only thing that's occurring is a lack of training on the user. In an atomic response, all that's seen is the fact that the user went to a host and downloaded a piece of malware. So the response now is that the defender can block that host and possibly add the MD5 check of that malware from preventing it from re-entering the system. There's not much more else they can do. From the attacker point of view, they're going to realize that their host is no longer valid. Its reputation's bad. And they probably conclude that their malware probably is not going to be working anymore. Both a host reputation and malware reputation can be checked by things like check my IP and also using virus scanners. So at this point here, the attacker is going to change the host and they're going to change the malware. This is fairly easy. The attacker normally has a bunch of different hosts to be able to launch files from. And so they're just going to go ahead and grab a new host name and associate it with a current IP address. In the case of Vicky, the reason why the IP address wasn't blocked is because they're using Cloudflare. And Cloudflare is basically like Akamai for the bloggers. And so the DNS that shows up is Cloudflare, and blocking Cloudflare, you're going to wind up blocking everybody. So the attacker is fairly smart, but now they have to activate a new host onto the Cloudflare. And they're also going to repack their malware. That's going to take 4 or 5 minutes. What that's going to do is generate not only a brand new MD5 checksum or SHA-1 checksum, but it's actually going to change the way the file looks to the antivirus products. Now with those things corrected, the attacker can relaunch their attack and see if it's successful. Now in a holistic analysis, things are a little bit different. In this case here, holistic analysis is going to tell us why Vicky even went to that site. We're going to be able to determine that she was actually searching, and it's that search that brings her to the first malicious site. In this case here, Bing responds with a malicious site, downloadly. This is going to be the first site in a chain of sites, and we can mark this down and know the IP address and the site name. In this case here, again, the IP address is being hidden by Cloudflare, but we can at least say this particular host is not one that we want our users to go to, and we can block it. Using holistic analysis, we can confirm that this is how Vicky winds up getting to the malware. The malware repeats back the query that she did and gives her the instructions on how to install the software to be able to read the data. We now know how to train our users not to get fooled by this type of attack. A lot of times, when a file gets downloaded, the analyst is unsure if it's from web spoofing or if it's from chat, from Facebook, or from a piece of email. And a holistic analysis lets us know how that person actually winds up getting infected, so we can actually train our people on how to respond to the issue and to the threat. Holistic analysis also shows us the chain of referrers that brings us to the site that's malicious. So now we have 3 more sites that we know are malicious and that we can block, again, from further activity from our users. Finally, in a holistic system, one created by a tool like Fluency, we actually grab the files as they're moving around. That allows us to replay these files in sandboxes, and not only to confirm they're malicious, but to also yank out their covert channels. This is important because the attackers have already spent a lot of money and time building up this covert channel infrastructure, and they're not as easy to replace as sites that are used for downloading malware. So what does this holistic response look like now? Now we have a total of 7 sites that we know are bad, 3 IP addresses that we know are bad, and these ones we can block. They're not being obfuscated by Cloudflare. We know how they got in, so we can teach our users how not to get fooled by this type of attack. And we've got a sample of that piece of malware that we can not only do further analysis with, but of course we can go ahead and block with MD5 checks and SHA-1 checks, not only on our host systems, but network systems that are capable of blocking. So now the response looks completely different. There's 7 DNSs that are being blocked, 4 hosts prior. Even though we can't get the addresses, we know where they're coming from. They're being obfuscated through Cloudflare. We know how the exploit works, so we can train our people. Like I said, we have a copy of that malware, and we know the covert channel infrastructure, so we can block both the IP addresses and the host. Unlike the atomic response, which only has 2 changes, an holistic response has 17. Now, how does this look to the attacker? Well, to the attacker, they're going to have to change a lot. They're going to have to change the DNSs for the hosts. They're going to have to change the way in which they run their exploit. The people are now smarter. Of course, they're going to change their malware and their malware packer. And if they're not smart enough to change their covert channel, they're going to fail again. More importantly, in a holistic defense, when the next detection occurs, we're going to do the whole process over again. And we're going to find the new DNSs, the new hosts, the new addresses, and so forth. This technique generates a persistent defensive. We're leveraging each tool to let us know something's wrong, but then we holistically look at all the tools, grab their data, pivot and analyze so we can see across the network how this attack is working. The response is more complete, and because we're tracking the activity, we're going to be able to see the changes in the iterations of the attack and be able to respond to them. This type of attack did occur. This analysis occurred, and the complex response also occurred. The advantage here is that we can continue to track these attacks from this attacker and modify the network. Just as they can be persistent in attacking us, we can be persistent in defending. And all they have to do is make one mistake in the chain of attack, and we can adjust the entire defense against it. Just like they're looking for the weakest link in our defenses, we're taking advantage of the weakest link in their attack.